They're planning on drilling all around my property here in this area behind me, which is called the HDs. So we have two things that are really bad about drilling out here. One is that it is a wild, roadless area that's highly erodible, and the other is that it's the outcrop, and that we might lose all our spring water and well water.
We're past the peak of production in the San Juan Basin, but there's anywhere, depending on the estimate, from 30 to 60 more years of gas from the various formations within the San Juan Basin. But the issues are very complex. There's lots of issues, and they're very complex. There's social economic issues, cultural resource issues, wildlife issues, water issues, human health and safety issues from methane seepage and all that, roadless area issues.
This is a highly technical industry we're in, and so one needs to really, to formulate an opinion, whether you're impacting wildlife, natural resources, water, outcrops, you really need to understand the technology and the science behind this. And I think education is important. People need to understand this is science and not emotion and not politics.
The worst thing would be if there was a lot of roads and pads built up in here. I'm sure there would be enormous erosion, and it would fill up my ponds with silt. And all the road traffic in here, be a lot of wildlife disruption, so there's the whole aesthetic part of it.
The roads you see, you may say, well, gosh darn that Petrox, but guess what? I don't control that. We do not determine the size of roads we can use or necessarily even where we go with those roads. Remember, that is a function of the BLM Forest Service. They tell us, here's where your road pretty much needs to be. I've pushed my company strongly to go for smaller roads. It's less money to me, and I don't need big roads.
Even if they close their roads, people would be all in here with ATVs and stuff and would scare a lot of the animals away, but deer and elk may not be that affected, but they would be during hunting season if there's roads all over the place, because now people have to walk way in here or use horses, and there'd probably be ATVs all over the place.
So the roads will be in there, but the public can't use them. Again, that's not my decision. I recommended that your public lands be left open for you to use. But the environmentalists were so strong on this document, they convinced the Forest Service that any roads I build, that they be behind a gate, a locked gate.
They're taking away our groundwater, our adjudicated agricultural water. See, they're pulling groundwater out so that they can get the gas out of the coal seam. And then they re-inject that water so deep it can never be used again. So after they pump the water out, they inject hydraulic fluids deep into the rock formation, the coal seam, and it cracks it to let all the gas out. But they're putting hydraulic fluid into the ground. And if that's in the same seam that your water's in, then all of a sudden your water is all contaminated with heavy chemicals.
Impacts to surface water, like from erodible soils and spills from equipment or runoff from gas pads with erosion and things like that. And that's can be handled pretty well with best management practices, we call them. The other big water issue associated with the HDs is groundwater impacts. And what we've learned in the San Juan Basin is that coal bed methane development has an impact on groundwater resources. To get the gas out of the ground, you have to move a lot of groundwater, and that has both direct and indirect effects.
The water issue is where you have the outcrop and a river intersecting. A lot of the water we have in rural areas, methane can be taken out of water very easily. It doesn't have a high solubility in water, but you don't want to bring it in your house and have your pilot start and it could cause an explosion. And so let's be sure what we do doesn't get gas in those springs. And so far, we've identified those areas where they get their water. We've looked at the quality of water, and we put vapor tubes there to see if there's any gas at all. So if there is some gas, we'll know right away if it's coming out.
That's the outcrop. That's the edge of the outcrop, and that's where the coal comes to the surface. The basin is like this big basin. It's filled with gas, and the coal seam comes up on the edge, and that's where the gas actually comes to the surface. So here on the outcrop, the gas is actually very shallow, and that's why it makes a big difference. When they're drilling and fracking here, they're just not that deep, and so they're also in the same water that's coming to the surface. Drilling near the outcrop has been frowned upon because of homes that have had to be demolished because gas came up in their wells. They're saying anything within 1.5 miles of the outcrop should not be drilled. That was the recommendation.
And if things still appear safe, we still don't see impacts at the outcrop, we don't see major water drawdowns, then we would allow a few more wells. If something changes that picture, then what we've said in this decision that's come out, we would do everything from ratcheting production back to see if we could minimize those impacts, to shutting wells in completely and not allowing any new wells.
On the outcrop, the concerns is that as you dewater and lower the pressure, that gas will come out of the outcrop. And at that point where you have gas coming out, you certainly don't want to have a house there. Or two, it can kill the grass and the trees. We want to be a good neighbor, and we've tried to really do that. And we have used a company called LT Environmental. They're an independent company. They're not part of our company. We would go down to those areas that we saw from our aerials that looked of concern, and we have not seen any gas at the outcrop. And we have spent considerable amount of money, again, looking at the outcrop and monitoring the outcrop. And what we've determined from our studies is that this outcrop in Archuleta County, it seems to be somewhat sealed. And as a result, the gas is not escaping and getting in this case, mainly it's going to be damaging trees and vegetation.
See, Petrox did a study. They hired their own guys, said there's no problem along the outcrop. Well, of course not. Petrox paid for it.
Let's develop America's energy in a safe, responsible, good environmental way, and we can do that, and we've been doing that. And we should be, as a nation, thankful for our energy and our energy industry, and not to look at it as an evil.
We, the agencies, have really appreciated the patience of everyone and the input of everyone, both the public and the industry and other agencies. It's been about a 5-year process to get to this point, and it's taken a lot of work, but we feel like we've really taken a hard look at things and come up with some workable decisions that allow for reasonable energy development to occur.
Hopefully, they won't drill back here. They shouldn't. For 2 reasons: the outcrop issue and the fact that it's roadless to begin with and no surface occupancy leases. And if that happens, and I do have hope that it may, then they won't drill here, and it'll be great.